Okay, here we go. It's really happening. This is a special Thursday edition of Bring It In Troops, little Zoom from quarantine show. I'm here with Jarod Hector and David Thorpe. Okay, sit down, settle in, take half an hour. I'm going to read off the pieces that moved in this big NBA trade. James Harden goes from the Rockets to the Nets, along with a 2024 second-round pick from the Cavaliers. The Rockets get Victor Oladipo from the Pacers, Dante Exum from the Cavs, Rodion Kurucs from the Nets, a 2021 pick swap, a first-round unprotected first-round pick in 2022, and the Bucks first-round pick via the Cavaliers. 2023 pick swap, 2024 first-round pick from the Nets, 2025 pick swap, 2026 first-round pick from the Nets, 2027 pick swap. The Pacers got Caris LeVert from the Rockets via the Nets, and a 2023 second-round pick from the Rockets. And the Cavaliers somehow got Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. What the hell? How do they do that? It's amazing. Okay, so we're going to open with a little, like not 9x90, but 3x90, I guess, where, Jarod, you're just going to tell us in 90 seconds your initial reception of this news.
So coincidentally, as it would have it, I was talking to another sports agency that represents NBA players, and we were wrapping up our call, and then I get a text. I was like, what? And then I see the Shams and Woj, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I go outside. My girlfriend, who is a clinical nutritionist, dietitian, is talking. I was hoping she wasn't talking to patients. I just opened the door. James Harden's on the Nets. What the hell? And she turns around and she goes, what? Did he play for that other team? I was like, what? And I'm like, oh, they sent a bunch of people over. But wait, why did they send two people over and he only got one? I go, it's too complicated to explain. She goes, well, who was sent over? Caris LeVert. And she was like, Caris, he was playing well. I feel bad for him. And it brought me into that moment of, we live in a cynical world and what we do for a living is cynical. Henry, I had a moment. I felt for Caris LeVert in that moment. I was like, because I started covering this team his rookie year. So his whole career, as with Jared Allen's, like, I've known them since they were babies, quote unquote. And I was like, damn. It was sort of like, I'm not going to say I shed a tear, but I was like, this is the rough side of this business, man. You got to wake up one day, you're thinking, all right, KD and Kyrie, we're doing this thing. Now I'm going to Indiana. But for Caris, I do think that Indiana is going to be a nice place for him. Poor Jared in Cleveland, that's a whole different story. But, that was my initial thought and where I was when all this broke down.
I like it. I like your girlfriend's reaction. Just what a nice person she must be. Just a thoughtful person. So you guys may not know this, but when you get to be old, on Saturday nights, you do whatever, and then you tend to watch SNL, especially when there is a maniacal man as a president. And a couple years into his presidency or so, SNL had a great skit my wife and I watched where Kenan Thompson, who can't not make me laugh, he could be eating cereal and I would laugh. He also would be laughing. There was a skit where they were talking about these crazy things the president was doing, and Thompson would other people would react, and he would just say, ain't nothing going to happen. Well, my wife and I have been saying that now ever since, because all this crazy shit our crazy president does, ain't nothing going to happen. And of course, things have happened a little bit. So I'm on the phone yesterday with an NBA player, similarly, Jarod, when the news breaks. He told me, this NBA player told me, and all I could think of was Kenan Thompson. Ain't nothing going to happen. Like, whatever. Like, they're not winning the East. I'm sorry. I think the Kyrie issue has got disaster written all over it. They're going to be fun to watch, except no one's going to be in the building. So I don't really know how this ends for them. When the Cavaliers are the big winners in the trade, it makes me think, okay, we could have redone this and had a better result for a lot of teams. There's a lot of intrigue. Palace intrigue, as our buddy Kevin Arvis would like to say. The Rockets have a lot of that palace intrigue. But just like with this impeachment, there's a lot more that's about to happen. We're going to learn a lot more over time. And I can't wait for Henry and you, Jarod, to figure it out, because I won't know. Behind the scenes.
All right, so I already tweeted this. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging about I gave convalescent plasma, but I did. I went yesterday to the Red Cross and I sat there. And the deal is when you do the plasma, it's a 2-arm operation. They put pads under your arms. You have to keep both arms straight, and they're very nice, but they will yell at you if you even bend your arm. And so the way they've worked out, that they can keep a modern American human still for the almost 3 hours that it takes is you basically have to watch a Netflix movie. Like they're like, what movie are you gonna watch? We're putting it on, blah, blah. So I'm sorry, I was looking at my phone while you were talking, David, about I was trying to find the name of the movie, but I watched like a bunch of doped up, big, strong dudes shooting each other, trying to rip off the Federal Reserve in LA. It's a 2018 Netflix movie. I forget what it's called, but I watched this movie for 3 hours. And then I walk out to the car. I'm like, oh, I'll just text my family and tell them I'm on my way home. And I'm like, oh, good God. Like, what is, come on. Like, what? And then, so I have to spend, you have to sort of do your rounds and like, what's going on? Orient yourself in the real world. And then I did have my one other thought was like, in all the research and phone calls about the Rockets right now, like Rafael Stone is the epicenter of it now. And one of the themes is like, he's not stupid, right? Like, he's got his flaws. Everyone's got their flaws, but he's not stupid. And at first I'm like, Rafael, like you sly dog, like he got a lot for James Harden. And I think I'm also seeing that he had orders to not spend any money, right? Like they could have had a way better haul if they paid some salary. But well, in those terms, I thought he did an amazing job. And that ends our 3 by 90.
Well, there's a lot to learn from we've talked about this, guys. Almost never does a trade happen because someone's speculating it's going to happen. They keep this stuff quiet, right? And there's a fluidity to this. So it's possible that the Rockets were posturing about what they wanted back. It's possible, right? It's possible they were hoping to get that, but settled for this. It's a good haul for them, right? If these are fluid situations, we should always remember that because more trades are coming, right? Is John Wall really going to stay? Where's PJ Tucker going? Where's Bradley Beal going, the next big name on the block? Is Kyrie Irving ever going to play again? And if so, what team is he going to play for? These are all things. So just remember, when people start writing all this stuff, what if the writing almost never happens because people behind the scenes know we got to keep it quiet until we actually have the ink dried.
Well, to that point, Coach, when these trades happen, you then, as a journalist, Henry, right, we go back and go, okay, could we have seen this coming? And we try to connect the dots, go all the way back. So the trade gets officially, Shams and Woj announced it yesterday on Wednesday. Tuesday, the Nets play their first night of a back-to-back against the Denver Nuggets. DeAndre Jordan plays 0 minutes in that game. And I was like, oh, that's kind of, in the moment, I thought it was strange, but didn't think anything of it, right? And and you keep going back. And I kept watching this team and its posture and body language. And all the time, the sort of direction of when they're on the court and they're playing, and there's always frustration. Guys, you got to do this, and guys, you got to do that. Durant constantly barking orders at Caris LeVert and Jarrett Allen, but encouraging Bruce Brown. And I'm like, that's kind of strange.
Good, Jarod. Yeah. Very good sleuthing by you.
So then I'm like, these mother effers knew all along what was happening. He knew he wasn't going to be here. He knew that this trade was in the works. And so that's what you then go back and you start seeing. Because I was just filing stuff away. I was thinking of working on something long for TrueHoop about the season. So I just kept jotting down notes of stuff that I saw. And then when this gets announced, I'm like, oh man, this is how this game works. Because to your point, Coach, this stuff doesn't happen all overnight. Oh my God, the Rockets decided today we're going to trade James Harden. No, they've been talking about this for weeks or months or whatever. And now here we are. So I thought that was interesting.
Also, we've been lied to, right? I can't so number one, the Rockets were going to go into the luxury tax. That's what he said it outright. Rafael said, even if they make a trade to get cap room and they're going to spend into the luxury tax, he expects not holding my breath. John Hollander said they may never spend luxury tax again.
He wrote that today. Wrote that today. Yeah.
Right. So that was a big fat lie, right? Yeah. They also said they were insisting on a young blue chipper. Well, that was leaked, but didn't get one, right? And then finally, Daryl Morey was not interested in trading Ben Simmons, but there was pretty detailed, 76ers went through a lot of hoops to try to include Ben Simmons, right? So I don't know. It's not that I begrudge them lying to us. I understand why it happens, but I don't think as fans we should be like, yay, they tricked us. No, we were the victims of that, right? They intentionally misled us.
My stance is I don't call it lying. I understand your point, Henry. I don't like the insisting part. And you said that word. I'm glad that you did, because they're not insisting on squat, right? You can want, you can desire, you can covet, but there's no insisting going on here. You're going to take the best deal you can get, or you're not going to take it. But the insisting part almost never works. the Daryl thing is what intrigues me the most, because I've been on the record many times saying I think it's a mistake to trade Simmons for Harden. I don't think it's a mistake to trade Simmons. I'm very worried about Ben Simmons being an average player. Like, he's 24. What is going on? Something isn't working. And it just seems impossible they're going to trade Embiid, right? The other night, he just showed he has a chance to be MVP of this league. Simmons is not progressing the way you want him to. So to me, Daryl would be not doing a good job if the Rockets were saying, okay, we want Ben. All right, what does that look like? Like, you're allowed to have that conversation even if you were never willing to pull the trigger. The mistake Daryl made is you shouldn't be insisting what he said, because the reality is if someone's willing to offer you something amazing, who wouldn't you trade? Like, there's almost nobody that's untradeable, and there's certainly no one on that roster, including Embiid, because of his injury situation, right? I don't like that part. I think that's a mistake, but these guys go through the process just to get value. Okay, what is the value this team has? Maybe another team wants to get involved, and maybe all of a sudden you have something that really does make your team better now and potentially later, or both. But what Henry said, no fan should ever be. Don't ever take what they say, as if it's your spouse saying it, because that's not their job to tell you the truth. They're trying to get a deal done behind the scenes. They have to be smart about it. I love, though, I don't want to go too fast ahead, but I love what Henry wrote here. Let me find Henry. You put in our doc, in 3 years, which player traded yesterday will be the highest performer? That's such a fantastic question. I don't know the answer.
Who is the answer? Who do you think? It's tough to say, right?
In 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, let's start eliminating guys. Who isn't going to be? Like, Oladipo is not going to be the best player of the group.
Well, it won't be Oladipo. It won't be Durant. It won't be Harden, right? Like, Oladipo because of the injury history, Durant and Harden because they're going to be aging out of their primes, right? So it won't be them.
I say who's really good. He's not there now, but Jarrett Allen is coming.
I was going to say it's probably Jarrett Allen or Karis LeVert, right?
It might be one of those 2021 pick swap.
Well,
but even in the pick swaps, walk me through the pick, because Houston's losing a bunch of picks too, right? From previous deals.
They're losing one pick.
One, but they gained a ton, right? And so as Henry said, the Nets don't have any control over their draft until the year 2028. They have zero control over it. So yes, they'll have picks, but it is not going to be what they want, because it's either a pick they traded or the swap. So they're always going to get the lower end, right, based on how the swap works. I will say this. We do this thing with draft capital all the time where we're like, oh my God, you're screwed because you traded away your future. There is a good chance none of these future picks will ever be as good as Kevin Durant is at his prime, right? Because that's a generational player. There's a very good chance no one in that future draft is ever as good. There's a good chance no one's as good as James Harden. Good chance that no one's as good as Kyrie Irving, right? Because we're talking about, at least for KD, that's one tier, then Harden, then Kyrie. Those are all-time great level players. Those people don't come around. They don't grow on trees. So I think there's a little bit of sort of, kind of couching you have to play there. What they did do, however, as we know, is when this ends, because it all ends eventually, they are screwed in terms of how you're going to build yourself back up, because you got the bottom end of every draft for the next 8 years. That's a problem. But it's probably not going to be Sean Marsh's problem, because if they don't win a title, he won't be here anyway. So that's the next guy's deal to worry about.
Well, and I'm a little bit like, if you do tour of the media and assess this trade, what people think about this trade, like, there are known quantities and unknown quantities in this trade, right? We only assess the known value, which is ridiculous because all the value's in the picks, right? So, like, I'm not, no one pick. Most of these systems have been about one pick. 7 first-round picks is 100% a Kevin Durant level player. Like,
because they could get traded into something or turn. Yeah.
No. Because you just get wrong 6 times. But you don't get it wrong 7 times. Like you're with a very high pick, you're gonna hit 1 out of 4, right? 7 is enough. Like, you're good, right? Like, with 2 teams, you get the optimal of 2 teams picks over that period. Like they're gonna get a freaking stellar player, right? And in the meantime, they pay 0. But we don't do a good job of, like, I got a little animated here. I'm skipping to the end of our document, but and the Ringer, Jonathan Sharks wrote this thing about how it's an all-in league. I'm going to read it. The Warriors just spent the number 2 overall pick on a 19-year-old center, James Wiseman, who may need 3 or 4 years before he's ready to play a significant role on a title contender. Helping Wiseman develop may be in the best interest of the franchise, but it's not necessarily in Steph. So he'll be 36 when Weissman is coming off his rookie deal. Does Curry want to spoil the rest of his prime to keep the Warriors relevant when he's in his old age, or does he eventually go to the front office and tell them to move Weissman, all their future picks, for a more established star? It's the same problem the stars who've wanted to stick with one team have experienced over the past decade. Take Damian Lillard in Portland. His chances of winning a title would be much higher if he had pushed to join his super team somewhere else. It doesn't mean that his decision to stay with the team that drafted him is bad, but he's added this advantage in comparison to his peers. The Blazers have traded only one future first rounder, 2021, to upgrade their current team. Actually, I think that's wrong. They traded this year's too. It's fair for Lillard to ask why so many picks are burning a hole in their pocket. To me, I'm like, all I was thinking was about, like, would Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic be better off if they didn't have Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo, but instead had James Harden last year, right? It's tough to say, right? But those picks aren't nothing. And you want 23-year-olds on your team to make it to the finals. You do. Sorry, David. You look like you're just, I said a lot there. Go ahead. I know what you're thinking.
So first of all, every fan in Sacramento is thinking, what the fuck are you talking about with this? Right? There's always that. Okay.
I was talking about the NBA.
Sacramento not an NBA team.
That's only the first problem I have with what you just recited. Although they're not all your words. Where is it written that Weissman can't help a team win for 3 or 4 years? I didn't see that memo. Okay. I think your point is excellent when you said 23-year-olds, not 19-year-olds. I don't think you're stupid, but he is a very, very, very special player, and I don't know how long that's going to take. But as I've said all along, I want to fire a lot of bullets, not just one. And this is where I think the All-In League is such a mistake. But you're allowed to think that. I want to mention Brooklyn in a moment, but let's just go to this. Because Henry, I thought, asked that great question of who's going to be the best player. And by the way, all those 7 picks, none of them will be the best player in the next 3 years, which was what your question was, right?
Maybe,
that's down the road.
Maybe.
Some of them aren't even picked to 2027. It's only 2021 now.
I know, but I'm just saying that
he's in middle school right now.
It's entirely possible that a 2021 lottery pick will be more valuable than Karis LeVert in 2024. That is
well, you said best player, so it's unlikely that he will be, and the 2027 guy for sure because he's in middle school now. But to me, what's going to happen next is the question I keep asking. Where are those dominoes going? I don't know where Bradley Beal's going. I just can't imagine he'll stay in Washington. That's a huge question. Okay. Secondarily, but not that far away, even though he's not nearly as good, where's PJ Tucker going? Because what if he goes to Golden State? How much would you want to play a team that by the end of the year has got a starting lineup of Curry, Oubre, Wiggins, Tucker, Green, with fucking Weissman coming off the bench and Damian?
No part of that.
Like Steph Curry. Saying Steph Curry, right? With those 2 defensive guys. First of all, Wiggins is coming around as a defender. Oubre's not there yet. He should be a plus defender for sure. Green and Tucker can really guard and command a unit defensively. That's not a fun team to play, guys. This is because of Curry. Forget about him. No Curry is different. So I want to see where the other pieces now go. And then the last part on Brooklyn. I've said this since day one. It should be the sexiest team in sports. It's such a cool place. It really is. I'm not from there, but I feel like I'm home there because it's such a cool place. I know. And Henry's wife, it's such a cool spot. It really is. And so they finally have a team that you can't really embrace the way you could the team 2 years ago, but you can in terms of just swagger. Except one guy doesn't want to play basketball right now. One guy is 811 pounds. The other guy's coming off an Achilles injury, and no fans are in the gym anyway. So next year they'll have the swagger. Maybe they will. So for 1 year you've done this because then they're free agents. Correct me
if I'm wrong, but Brooklyn wanted that gritty team. Brooklyn wanted the Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert team, right? I felt like the city was like, Brooklyn wanted the we did this the hard way team, not the
right. Memphis had their grit and grind, and they didn't win a championship or make it to the finals, but they had 5 stellar years of identity branded basketball. And your point, Henry, genius. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but the Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell was just a couple years ago. That team was fun and building. So it's just they've going all in, with no fans. It's really odd to me. I don't like seeing. I don't love their future. What do you think, Jarod?
We talked about this, right? Like this idea that stars often make terrible GMs, right? And it's because they have this
always make terrible GMs.
They cannot see outside of the immediacy of what's in front of them and the value they place on things like, I mean, of course, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but like the ability to score the basketball, right? Like that is so paramount to them. Because, I mean, of course, that's how you win the game. But there are all these other things that matter, right? Like with someone like Jarrett Allen, like, yes, he's not scoring 20 points a game and whatever from the post and all that, but he's mobile and can switch and guard a bunch of guys. You know who can't do that? DeAndre Jordan, right? Like he can't do that shit. So that's going to be a problem. Karis LeVert's young and can command that second unit. Who's your second unit commander now?
Cheese man.
So that to me is problematic. And you mentioned Kyrie, and I want to read this quote. He was on Richard Jefferson's podcast a couple years ago, and I had forgotten about this. But in the midst of what's happening, here's what he said. One of my best friends told me that he really thinks that I may become the Lauryn Hill of the NBA and just leave early before I even get out of my prime. Channing Frye says to him, "You mean the Barry Sanders?" I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm 25, so by the time I get to 10 years in the league, I'll be 29. I'm not going to say I'm going to be the Lauryn Hill of the game, but that's what my best friend told me. I love this game with all my heart, but there's just so much knowledge to be acquired and so much that should be happening, but isn't. That was a couple years ago. The Nets and Sean Marks said, now we know that GMs lied to us, but he was, and I believed him on this part. He didn't want to mortgage the future and get rid of all their young guys to bring in another superstar because he felt this was the best way to do it. They are uncertain about this Kyrie thing because there is no timetable when he's going to come back, and there is legitimate concern in the organization that he may not come back.
Exactly.
So if he doesn't, they're worried about Kevin Durant now because that's the person they have to keep. They're like, shit, now we got to go panic mode, push all the chips in the middle of the table because I got to get somebody to keep him happy. And of course, when the NBA is a stars league, we know that. But when you do that, you become beholden to these guys, and your margin for error is so thin. If they win a title, it's all well and good and great, no problem. If they don't, fucking disaster.
Well, Prokhorov was sure he was smarter, right? Like he had so much swagger about how 29 teams were stupidly run, and he had the pocketbook and the brains to do it. Like, you don't understand. We have a certain model. It's like, and it fucking sucked. He was wrong the whole time. Like, he made all the worst trades. Like, as a Blazers fan, thank you very much for Damian Lillard, who was a gift. like you idiots, right? Like they just gifted a whole bunch more, right? Like what I see on this trade is Joe Tsai has very deep pockets, and it always hits the same thing. It's always trading the future for the now, right? And it's a willingness to spend. You're going to beat them up with the pocketbook. Everyone else doesn't have your cojones, right? Or your wallet, and that's how they're going to win. And that's what new owners always do. This Paul Allen did this, Mark Cuban did this, Miguel Prokhorov did this, James Dolan did this, and like it doesn't usually work. It sometimes does, but it's not a good strategy. If it succeeds, it's despite itself, right? And this is where I'm like, okay, so Joe Tsai wants to show that he's the big man. Okay, great, and he's got the money for it. Fantastic. So he's buddy listening to his superstar buddies, right? And like, oh, you guys want this, you don't want that. Okay, we'll make all your dreams come true. Fine. Meanwhile, in Houston, we have an owner who, this is where actually, David, I'll take issue a little bit with what you said. Like, they did lie, and it fucking matters because they were selling season tickets and sponsorships at the beginning of the year when they're like, yeah,
that's different. I'm with you on that. That's wrong.
This is Rafael's bargain, right? It's like he's got the mission of obliterating their payroll. He's executing that mission, and he's going out and saying, oh, we expect to be, we're big game hunters, and we're going to be right in the mix for championships and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that's outrageous. Yeah, I'm not at all suggesting that isn't outrageous. Jarod mentioned Brooklyn and scoring, and I put these notes in here. So here's the last 10 champions in their defensive rating at the end of the regular season. Yeah. The Lakers 3rd, the Raptors 5th, Golden State 11th, Golden State 2nd, Cavaliers 10th, Golden State 1, Spurs 3, Heat 9, Heat 4, Mavericks 8. Right now, as it stands today, the Nets are 12th, okay? So if you look at that list, the Golden State 11 and the Miami 9 were both following championship runs where they just cruised until the postseason and then played amazing in the postseason, right? The Cavaliers at 10, same thing, right? They had made 2 finals in a row. They had made a final, but LeBron had made at that point 5 or 6 in a row, and they cruised and then turned it on late, right? Normally you have to be a top 5 defense, right? LA 3rd, Raps 5th, Miami 4th, the year they won the first time. The Mavs were a little bit different. They really came on late in the year, as you remember. I don't know where this team goes. I do think Jarod's right in terms of they're going to try to outscore you, and they're going to score a lot. Harden Durant is super scary, and we can talk later about the best way to do it. Honestly,
go on. How do you? I'm confused about how you play them. Like, what's the best approach?
So let's get one thing clear. Your lovely wife, who doesn't know a damn thing about basketball, could coach that team to a top 5 offensive team. I mean that, because Durant and Harden are really geniuses.
How much does it pay?
They are genius players. They're so talented for sure. I mean, top 5, top 6 offense. Because you can't guard them one-on-one. The smartest thing and I don't even know. I think Jarod's right. I don't know about Kyrie. And just to finish the point of Kyrie, Jarod, even if he comes back, who trusts it at this point? He has not earned anyone's trust that he'll stick around. I don't know if they trade for Harden if Kyrie doesn't do this.
They don't. I don't think they do, personally.
Okay, so you would know better than me, but I'm not surprised at that. So whether they have all 3 or just 2 of them, the smartest thing for them to do would be not to just do ISO. It takes a lot more energy to always have to manufacture a bucket one-on-one. And don't just do, well, in the case of, it'll be like with Kyrie's out, there'll be a Durant's going to play some center, guys. Mm-hmm. That seems pretty clear to me. Yep. So don't just do 2-4 and 2-5 pick and rolls. I would like to see Durant in the pinch post where he's amazing. I would like to see Harden in the low post where he's way better than people realize. I think they should diversify the way they feature those 2 guys, right? Joe Harris is always going to be doing the same thing. I would do some Duncan Robinsons with Joe Harris. Mm-hmm. I would be doing some wide pins and stagger screens. If he can shoot off the move, I don't know if he can. He's North kept and shoot. I'd play with it. You're going to be good enough offensively to play with it now, and games are practice, as we've talked about, and take advantage of that. I don't know what else. I mean, they don't have much else, nor they're going to have to add some G League talent. There's some G League players that can help them right away, not the 19-year-olds, but the older guys. But I'm not sure you're going to feature them in anything. Maybe you should, but they won't. But defensively is where I think they're in real trouble. Yeah. Real trouble. Because if they don't do what I'm suggesting, and Nash, by the way, has tried. Gerard, you must see this when you watch them play. They're running some good things.
They do.
They're not just throwing Durant getting out of the way. No. Don't do that now. Yeah. But to get them, I mean, Steve, who's their defensive coordinator, Gerard?
Jacques Vaughn.
Oh, so I don't know that he's got great chops at that. I do like the way his team played in the bubble last year, of course. And so great. So Jacques, it's on you. I love that guy. I don't know that you're going to find a bunch of willing listeners. It'd be nice. I know this for Harden, and we've not talked about this at all, guys. No one has yet, but this is Harden. This is it for you, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
You better make. I don't know if they'll make the finals. I don't favor them. I know Vegas does, but James, we need to see the best we've ever seen from you two. Starting with, get on a Noom diet, do something, change. It's capable. You're capable of doing that. You're capable of changing your body. Do it. And you have to do. You've never played with a player better than Durant since the last time we played with him. Play better defense because we need less from you on offense. We better see those things, or I think they're going to be in real trouble. And it's going to be frustrating.
Right, Coach Henry, you said that James was 811 pounds.
I didn't say that. That was David. He did the fat shit.
I was kidding. Yeah. It's a good 230 though.
Well, here's an interesting connection. So Peloton's all the craze, right? Okay. Allie Love, the Nets in-game arena host, Peloton instructor. We can definitely get something for James Harden, my man. Let's just work it out with the Nets. Get you on a Peloton, you'll lose weight in no time.
When is he going to play, by the way? When will he be allowed to play his first game?
I imagine, because they're doing the medicals and all that stuff now, they're off today. They're going to practice Friday. So I'd imagine Saturday is what I guess. Here's the interesting thing. So they have 3 roster spots available, right? Because they have the taxpayer mid-level. Yeah. They have the disabled player and they have the vet minimum. So now let's be clear. No one ever wins the title by finding the 3 people to fill those areas. but you got to do something smart there. That's number one. A basketball question for you, Coach. I agree. They should not do just pick and roll, but I do wonder. Let's assume Kyrie's there and everything's fine. If you run the 1-5 pick and roll with Kyrie and DeAndre Jordan, and you have Durant, Harden, and Harris, that's, even though that's simple basketball action, that's still hard to defend, right? Because if you're running that, you're not helping off of anybody I just mentioned.
No, it's super hard to defend for the 15 minutes or so you can get defense out of DeAndre. Yeah, you just can't get enough of it. But yeah, that's a hard action to guard.
You don't get James Harden and Kevin Durant to stand there.
Well,
play after play after play after play.
But yeah, you can't just run that.
Right.
That's why I think they should have a diversified offense. I think Nash is going to have that part figured out, like I said, because Jessica can do it.
When you were talking, suddenly it occurred to me, I'm like, okay, like here's what I can picture: is Kyrie is Steve Nash, Kevin Durant is Amari Stoudemire, and then James Harden, I guess, is
Joe Johnson
or whatever, right? But just they have beautiful plays, like beautiful ways to have attacking from all places. Like Mike D'Antoni's there, Steve Nash is there. I think they know how to pull this off.
Oh yeah, I'm not, like I said, I wasn't exaggerating. Anyone could coach that team to a top 5 offense, top 6 offense. I really believe that. It's the other end that really has me very, very concerned.
Well, I'm also like, okay, so the reality of how basketball works is like almost never will all 3 of them touch it on offense on the same possession. Right. And if you look at the advanced stats, probably every one of them is better off with just a 3-and-D guy in that spot, right? Like, I don't know who's going to be wanting to control the ball more once they play together for 20 minutes. Like, might be James, might be Kyrie, might be KD. But like, would you not be better having that person just cook off the bench? Like, you might actually win more games. I know no one wants to do it. Their egos won't allow them, but like, wouldn't you be better off just being like, don't worry, like Kyrie and Kevin have the first quarter covered, and then second quarter, James, you just go bananas. Like, wouldn't that actually be more efficient?
Yeah, staggering them would be good. That's actually one of the things you can say to Kyrie is for every day you miss, it's just another game we're going to bring you off the bench. You're going to play a bunch. You'll play your minutes.
Oh, I like that.
There's got to be a tax to your decision making. There's got to be a tax to that. So you're going to come up. You'll be great. And Henry, you're not wrong. I mean, having those layers is effective, right? Iguodala was one of the best 5 guys for the Warriors for some of those years. Nash runs some good stuff already, and I just don't know who's their Fred VanVleet, right? Mm-hmm. Who is their Pascal Siakam? Who's the guy that you didn't see coming? Because who was their KCP? Remember how good in Game 6, like KCP was huge, right? I don't know. Joe Harris, we know, can really shoot. I'm a huge fan. They need more.
It would have been Karis LeVert and Jared Allen.
That's exactly right.
Well, and that goes to something Henry wrote about when we talked about Daryl. I'm glad you added this, Henry, because that's what I was thinking. I think Daryl was trying to hurt a competitor. That doesn't mean he wouldn't have pulled the deal off either. I'm not saying he only was doing that, but at the very least, he was doing that. That's 3-dimensional chess. Daryl's good at that. Like
this was when I worked at ESPN, like John Skipper held a meeting and explained that we didn't get the rights to something or other. I forget what. And he's like, but at least we drove the price way up for the best thing is to get the rights. The second best thing is to make someone else pay way too much for the rights. Right.
Right.
And,
right. We see this a lot when I was a young coach, and I was sometimes surprised that I would have players that were highly recruited players in high school, and I'm paying attention to where the other guys are going. And I'd be surprised that a big Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, whatever, would take a guy that I knew didn't fit with their rotation. It made no sense to me. And then I would just make some phone calls. Back then, you couldn't get on the internet. And I learned that, another team in their conference, like NC State, was going to take that kid.
Right.
Duke was like, fuck it. We'd rather be our 8th man. If we can convince him to come, right? Well, we don't got to play against him because he might be good enough to beat us. We're just loaded with talent too. And I thought that was terrible because this poor young guy was suckered into it, right? This is different. Daryl Morey does not have to look out for the best interests of the Brooklyn Nets, right? He can do exactly what Henry's talking about. He made them pay a really high price.
That's a high price.
And do you think, I don't want to talk about it too much, but might the Cavaliers be moving on to something like they have a backcourt that can't guard?
What happened?
got too many centers now, though.
right. But only for this year. Drummond's gone.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. Mike and Okoro, who is always going to be metrically terrible as a young player anyway, is a guy that's a PJ Tucker type, a real glue guy type. You don't want to draft top 5 for that normally, but it might be where they actually are working towards. He should be a great defender, which you need with those 2 little guys in the backcourt. And maybe you can trade one of those guys too. In fact,
what about Kevin Love?
For sure you can. Right. And you still have Love, who's a space guy, and I think always a better defender than people realize with all those centers. Jarrod Allen's not a good defender yet, by the way, not based on metrics. Right. I looked up their defensive ratings recently. I might have even done it this morning. I've been up for a while, and his defensive rating isn't great.
No.
Right? He's still young. He's still trying to figure stuff out. And DeAndre is a good defensive player. I just don't know how many minutes you can get from him. Right. And when teams go small, now you got to go Durant at 5 anyway, which is fine.
So do they need another center?
Huh?
Do they need another big?
For sure.
Here's what they're got to hope now is that the currently injured Nick Claxton and Reggie Perry are enough with DeAndre Jordan, because that's the big man they have. But with those 3 roster spots, that's what I assume they're going to do, is try to find a mobile big man.
Can I interest you in a Harry Giles?
What's interesting, Coach, from a defensive standpoint, and of course I agree with you 100%, with the no fans and the mics on in the arena, you hear everything now, right? So I thought it was interesting the last few games. I've been hearing them on defense because their big thing is like communicating. At least 10 times I've heard Durant be like, stay at home, and like an expletive in there. Like, instead of like coming out to help or double or switch. So I was like, oh, maybe they're trying to figure some things out on defense. Who knows?
They're 12th. They're not 22nd. So right. They've done okay with it. Maybe he prioritized it more. Guys, where's Bradley Beal going?
I liked your proposed. David has a proposed trade.
Tell us the trade.
I have 2.
Pretty simple. Bradley Beal for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that's one of them. I have one. I have him for Booker in Phoenix.
Ooh.
Which I think is because you can get Jalen Smith and probably a number 1, probably a Phoenix number 1. There's the Booker, Smith, and then you can get a first. And the Suns have 2 second-round picks. You can get one of them in 2022 for Beal. Phoenix is really good. If they want to decide, you're not really going all in. Beal's only 27. He does have an opt-out after next year. So you get him for this year and next season. But it's not hard to convince a guy to stay in Phoenix as long as Ayton keeps getting better, which is a concern. We don't know that. He's got a chance, right? But Beal with him, Chris Paul, who knows how he ages out, but then you have room to fill him in. But yeah, the Ben Simmons one I thought was very interesting. Like, who says no to that? Simmons only 24. All right. So it's a 3-year difference. You just got his extension. You've got him for a while. And here's the intriguing thing to me if you're Washington, because Beal is a terrific player. Simmons is an all-defensive player, all-defensive team guy who just is too fucking casual, right? Well, what's the one medicine you could administer to
Russell
that guy? Yeah, right. Like Russell, if you can get this guy to compete all the time like you do on offense, the spacing doesn't work. But by the way, Thomas Bryant's out for the year probably, or at least most of the year. I'd make Simmons your 5. And with Russell, just play super fast. Denny Avdija can fly. Rui Hachimura can really run. Just play crazy fast. Everyone shoots threes but Simmons and Westbrook, who both are incredibly gifted passers. Yeah. And with Simmons at the 5, that can be a pretty dynamic team.
Well, Coach, they got a little bit of a problem right now. Westbrook's quad may be more serious than they originally thought. So he might be out for a few weeks, and who knows what the future of that is. But love your point about Russell injecting that in him. So are we at the point now where we're saying, in order for Simmons to be the best actualized version of himself, it ain't going to be in Philly. He's got to go somewhere else. Is that where we're at now?
Well,
I'm not saying that.
I'm not going to quit yet because he's only had this new coach for a little bit, but I'm not encouraged by what I've seen in 11 games. His PER is just over 15. I haven't looked at his metrics more advanced than that.
When he's on the court with Embiid, they're plus 12.5.
They're really good. Yeah.
Which is like, that's the end goal. That's what the Nets are hoping to get out of their big 3 players, right?
For sure.
Something like that.
I don't think they have to do anything.
Yeah.
But long term, meaning the end of this year. Let's just look for this year. I just don't know if he's doing enough now. And if you can get Bradley Beal, I think Daryl would do that.
I'll tell you what else. I would like to credit the journalist who wrote about this, but I'm a little bit fuzzy who was. But somebody wrote about, like, we're not sure about Simmons' health. Like, he's had a bunch of problems. His knee sounds a little complicated. He had it, whatever. He's been out. Anyway, that was interesting to me. I'm like, oh, if you're Daryl Morey trying to put together a championship team and both of your stars are super injury prone, like, I can see why you might want to stabilize things a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Beal, if you're looking at after what happened yesterday, I guess we could argue that maybe the Nets have, I don't think it's definite, maybe the Nets have improved their chance of winning a championship. I understand the argument, but remember, going into the season, you thought it was Kyrie and Durant. Well, we don't know if Kyrie's going to play anymore. Harden is a beyond spectacular player and still capable of leading the league in scoring for sure. But I don't think anyone in the West is sweating it.
Yeah.
And so Beal could be a guy that makes him sweat. He ain't going to the Lakers or the Clippers. So where's Beal going? Right? That's what I keep thinking is, where does he end up next? They want him to stay in Washington for sure. They don't want him to go to Milwaukee. It seems unlikely that would be possible. Miami, if they keep Bam and they keep Butler with Beal, pretty damn good.
What about Aaron Gordon? Does he get moved?
I have a hard. I mean, we always say no one's gonna trade for him. People always do. That is not an easy contract to trade for. Yeah, that is not easy. PJ going somewhere makes a difference too.
Yeah. Okay. So can we please use my new term, the ladder? When you trade like a bunch of picks with pick swaps, to me, it's a ladder. I'm trying to get it to catch on. It probably won't. But now the Nets, Clippers, Bucks, and Lakers have all traded away some version of a ladder, right? And it seems fun, and people write articles about how you're all in and blah blah blah. Like, but it's going to have a terrible, painful downside where these big market teams and the Bucks will be really bad. In 2027, we're gonna, like, they have the Stepien rule, right? Because Ted Stepien was maybe the worst owner in the history of sports with some stiff competition, and he traded away basically every draft pick for years. So the NBA made a rule that you could only trade every other year. Well, this is a workaround, right? This lets everybody be Ted Stepien.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine. And for some reason, we're so stupid that we have to have a team actually ruin its future before we will address this again. But with 4 teams having done it, it's a lock. My guess is it'll be the Nets. Like, they'll be the ones. 2027, I'm going to be like, these NBA rules need to be changed. This is an outrage. Like, we want a team we can respect.
The next 7 years, I mean, it's the Thunder and Rockets making all the draft picks, right? Like, they're the only 2 teams picking the next 7 years.
The Pelicans.
Oh yeah, the Pelicans.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 teams.
Yeah. It's going to be something else.
OKC has Shea, and who's terrific, and the Pelicans have potentially Zion and Brandon Ingram.
It's not bad. Yeah.
No, yeah. So having those 2 guys plus all that talent, that's pretty nice.
Coach, basketball wise, I really like what Indiana did, because they're not a free agent destination, right? You're not going to get big name guys to go there, and to get rid of an expiring in Oladipo to get a guy like LeVert who's under contract for the next couple of years. Now he's going to slot into that Oladipo spot with Brogdon and Sabonis and Turner. I kind of like Indiana a lot, basketball-wise. I
do too. I just talked about it the other day. And the question is Miles Turner, who's having a career season, right? He's leading the league in block shots. He's not even shooting great from 3, but he's shooting good from 3. He's a good 3-point shooter. If the Pacers want to double down and just continue to beat you up inside, the Lakers did a pretty good job of that, but they had LeBron, right, and AD, better than anyone the Pacers have. But Turner can deliver potentially. I don't know what. I haven't even looked to see. I did like this summer, but not now. The Pacers can do something. And I'll just say this. There is a deal to be made, probably, to get the Pacers up to Miami. And Miami's not playing great now, but I think Miami will be there. Spoelstra does a great job over the course of the season. And Milwaukee. The Pacers can get there. Not necessarily better than Milwaukee, but they're good. And their coach is terrific. He's the next Nick Nurse. We can't say his name right, probably. He's the next. I need to pay attention more when I watch them play. I always have the volume down.
Is it Bjorkman?
Yeah. What's his name?
It's Nate Bjorkman.
I can't even hear what you're saying.
Bjorkman.
It just sounds so weird to me. Yeah, I don't speak Spanish.
Bjork, like the Icelandic singer Bjork, and throw a mun on there.
Yeah.
So I think that they can be. I think the Pacers. I think Jarod's exactly right. I love getting LeVert for them. He's better than Oladipo. He's got to be thrilled, and they still get T.J. Warren back at some point. He's been out a couple of weeks. They're not sure when he'll come back. It's something that should be fine. He should recover fully. They are kind of the Raptors without Kawhi, but they are a team you should not be asleep on. When I did, going back a couple years ago, Henry asked me to do who could win a championship. Like I included Toronto in that team, in that group. It was on the bottom end, but it was in there. It was possible they could win it. Milwaukee was killing everyone. I would do that with the Pacers, not necessarily as currently constructed. I need to see with them with LeVert. I could guess, but once I see them, I'll know more. But if they do the right deal with Turner, yeah, they're a team that they might mess up and win the East. They might mess up and win the East. Yeah, it's not impossible at all.
Can we pause for a second? And Jarod, I think we're about to see something really entertaining. I think you and I both enjoy it when David gets kind of mad about something that surprises us, right? Okay, well, Jerry has a question here about like the new rules that ban high fives between free throws. Like, will that affect? Like, David, I think I might saying David hates players high fiving between free throws. Tell us about that, David.
I do. I'm amazed that you remember that. How do you remember the crazy shit that I say? Is that really true, by the way? They're not letting players high five anymore?
They're trying to limit all that stuff. But if you watch the end of the games, they're not paying attention. They're doing it anyway. So, like, I just don't, like, they want them to not do it, but they're doing it.
So, very simply, my thing is, I just believe you should be doing in games that which you've always practiced. That's exactly what practice should be. It colors how you play in the game. And they don't high five in practice. I know. I've done lots of free throw shooting with players over the years. And I've seen lots of practices. Ain't no one high-fiving anyone during practice when they're on the free throw line. In fact, typically you're just on the line by yourself. What I do with my players, I make them shoot every free throw as if it's like a G League, one shot. In fact, in most of my workouts, we do one shots in between lots of drills because in the G League they do that. And every shot should be a reproduction of that individual mechanic. Don't stay on the line. As an example, when I used to coach and I saw a player and he would make a free throw and he would leave his foot on the nail or wherever the slot would be, I always knew, okay, that guy doesn't like to change his spot after a free throw. So if I need to disrupt his rhythm, I'm calling timeout before he shoots free throws. If they don't need that, in other words, if every single shot generates on its own beginning, the ref gives you the ball, then you step on the line, the timeout doesn't do any good because he's just going to do the same thing he's always done. So that's why I don't like high-fiving in games because they don't do it in practice. So to me, it's just, do whatever you do in practice. The archers, the biathletes, whatever, they're doing the same thing all the time. It doesn't change when they get to the competition. Same as golfers. That's how I am with basketball players too.
Thank you.
I love when coach gets fired up.
I know. So in response to your question, Jerry, it's way better for the league.
Right. You might see free throw percentages go up. It's true. That's what a weird thing to legislate.
Well, it's COVID. It's just COVID.
Right, but no, how about wear masks all the time when you're on the bench?
They also said that, yeah.
Well, even that, you watch the games, guys have got their mask on their chin.
What I'm saying.
You're not really doing it.
Trust me, my son is redshirting this year. He's never playing a game. I don't think that'll change unless they had a bunch of guys get sick, whatever, which hopefully doesn't happen. So all my wife does, I'm enjoying watching my son just have the greatest time ever. There's no pressure. He's smiling all the time. He's dancing. He does the whole thing every time they score, whatever, all this stuff. And all I hear my wife say is, "Put your mask on, son," because it falls below his nose all the time, right? And that's exactly in the NBA. Every mom is doing the same thing. Put your mask on. Just wear the damn mask.
There was a great moment where, oh my gosh, I love the quiet games sometimes produce these magical moments, but like, not this most recent Blazers Kings game, but like they played earlier, and Luke Walton's out there just like, giving hell to the refs. He's on the court, and then it goes quiet, and you just hear. It turns out it was CJ McCollum. You hear, "Put your mask on, coach."
Oh no!
And he does.
All right, forgive me, Blazers fans and Henry for saying this, but in the tumult of yesterday, in the world, in the country, and in the NBA, I thought it was just very quaint and sweet that the Blazers and the Kings decided to play a game. And I never even bothered to check what the score was. Who won the game?
Blazers won. Yeah.
I looked at your face. I figured that
game was quite good.
Who was good?
Game was quite good.
Lillard is pretty good.
I think there's a deal. Like, I think I saw some passing tweet that like CJ and Dame have now like set some ultimate record for like teammate scoring in the first chunk of the season. Like,
yeah, they're killing it. But my first reaction was, oh, it's so nice that they're still playing this game and out west, like as if nothing is really happening. To set the world on fire.
All right, so Devin has a question about what is Harden's legacy in Houston?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I thought our buddy Roosh from Ball is Life, I love what he wrote today. He tweeted today, and Jude, I have some funny tweets down below, I think near the bottom, that have nothing to do with this great question. He said when Harden comes back, like, we give that man a standing ovation. If you enjoy incredible talent, it's like if Mozart, you don't have to love Mozart's painting to give that man an ovation if he could still appear. Like, the genius is the genius. And I thought Harden made Houston more relevant than they'd been in a long time. With Yao's injury and McGrady's injury, they had a long streak of bad luck. You went to every game for X number of years knowing your team could win that game. And 5 teams, 4 teams, how many teams in that run could say that? Very few.
Yeah.
You knew your team likely was win that game, and that's all because of his genius. So his legacy is he made them relevant, and he's one of the best players of all time.
I agree with you, Coach. The one thing I think fans always need to like remember and keep in mind when we're talking about these elite and these all-time great players, of course we have to nitpick because that's what you do when you're at that level, right? Like, why is Giannis this, whatever. But the idea is you have one of these guys. And with having one of those guys, you're a quality team. You make the playoffs and deep runs every single year. Yes, you may not have won the ultimate prize, but only a handful of people end up winning it because it's fucking hard to do that shit. Like,
yeah, and you got to get lucky too.
Right. You need some luck and going to the Western Conference Finals like that. Listen, that's great. Like, because look at a bunch of franchises who never had that and may never, ever had that again, right? Kings may never have it for you again. Knicks may never, all these franchises who are just terrible. Like, it's, be thankful you had one of these guys because you may not have it again.
I mean, it came with the burden, right? We're going to acknowledge that he's not been the easiest guy. He's not been Kyrie. Let's face it. He's not been that off the wall and it's not showing up. He's getting heavy a couple times, and he's faltered late in playoff series, 4 times. But he's also, without him, you wouldn't be close to begin with. And it's fair to acknowledge that. And he's not been the best teammate. We can acknowledge that too. A lot of guys aren't happy they're not sad to see him go. Yeah.
So we talked about
DeMarcus Cousins. They're not sad today. They're quite happy.
I didn't see what they said, but I'm sure it wasn't great. Yeah.
When there's a little fan, like we talk about, I think we try to kind of think like, how do you make a team to win a championship, which is kind of a front office-y way to think, right? Fans aren't so much there, right? Like I think it's a lot more of like, do they like us, right? Like if you're a Houston season ticket holder, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like I have a lot of family and friends in Portland, and really they're like, they just want the players to like Portland, right? That's like a big part of it, and like. And in that part, that emotional part, it's like being in a marriage, it's like being in a serious relationship. And and James Harden went to the media and said he didn't love Houston.
Yeah.
And like, that's a particularly
I did not know that.
Right. Well, he said that they weren't good enough. Whatever his draw was to the city, he said basically like he'd done everything he could, but like it wasn't good enough. Like, because they couldn't do their part. He wasn't specifically pointing out.
In Cleveland, they burned a local boys or almost local jersey. Like, Henry's point is dead on. They took that personally.
It's a breakup. I mean, it's a rejection. It's a rejection.
Well, you know what's so interesting? And I think about this with fandom, and I said this last week on my 9x90 when I was like, I think I'm going to jump back in with the Mets. Like, well, as a fan, like, do you think it's just hard for fans to do that? Like, if a divorce is coming, you can leave the marriage too, right? Like, all right, this team is being shitty. I'm out of here. I'm going to go root for somebody else now. Like,
but not really. I mean, like, not if so, like, Mike Zarin, assistant GM of the Celtics, grew up in Boston, going to sit in the same seats with his dad. Like, he can't really leave the team. Like, he has to love that team or he can't love the NBA, right? Like,
I guess
that's why I think this is why they force players to talk in very careful bullshit ways about the team, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like, this is why this is every singer saying like rock and roll Cleveland. Like, it's totally understandable that you might forget what city you're in and say the wrong city. But if you do, think about it from the fan side. They're like, you don't even know you're in Cleveland. What?
Hey, I have a serious question to ask you both. So let's say this year or next year, Brooklyn wins a championship. Let's just, but
Could happen. Could happen.
In 10 years. Okay, so after they win a championship in one of those 2 years, they're not making the playoffs in any of those next years, which is no guarantee that won't happen either, or will happen. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to be a loser for 8 years to win one title as a business? Forget about fans. To me, the fans are going to be 50-50. Some guys would say, let's win one time, bragging rights. Others might say, no, let's just have a great year every year. The journey's more fun. But as a business, which is better?
Well, I would say
Kyrie. This is Kyrie's life in Cleveland. He did this.
Yeah.
They got one. Like, was it worth it? I don't know. Like, he probably will talk about it when he's 80. Anyway, sorry, Jarod, I cut you off.
If I'm Joe Tsai, I think it might. Let's say they win it next year in particular, not this year. Next year, we assume vaccination, fans, all that. TV money, gate revenues, all the further stuff you get by winning a title. I think monetarily, it might be. To win that 1 year and be man for the next 8, it might work money-wise.
That's a question I'd like an economist to tackle is 10 years of making the playoffs, having a chance to win a championship, or 2 years of having a really good chance, and then 8 years where you're almost for sure to be in the desert. Not guaranteed to be, but it's hard not to be in the desert when you can't even get lucky with a draft pick. Although it is a sexy place to come for sure.
Brooklyn, that's their hope, right?
I think so.
They win a title, and then we'll attract more free agents over time, and we won't have to worry about this whole.
And they might be right. Although there is an article today, I saw the chart on the tax implications for Mr. Harden.
Oh, it's giant. Yeah, you personally.
New Jersey or something. I don't know, because it's a monster.
Oh, he'll be fine. That's well, also, if they win a title in the next 2 years, then that means Steve Nash is a beloved, celebrated Hall of Fame coach, which means you get all the things that come with that, right? Then everyone goes on media and says how smart it is for the next free agent to sign there, and the next one, and on, right? Like, but to me though, this case is a little different than most. I think, for your excellent question, David, which is they were kind of on this path with the homegrown, young, more affordable,
for sure,
team, right? Yeah. So there's 3 stages of this story, right? Which is like, well, they blew that up to make this, and then we're in the dilemma that you're talking about. Whereas, like, in this case, I'm like, ooh, that first one was pretty good. Like, that would have been.
That's always my thing. As I've talked to my my teenage son about, if you're ever going to run a team, how I see it is build just every year, give yourself a chance, maybe get lucky. They're going all in, and then years in the desert. I just don't think that's fun. Be competitive. That's what Harden gave Houston. Yeah. They were interesting. Even last year, there was a period of time when they beat the Lakers in game 1. Like, hey, maybe Houston's got some. Just having that hope for one day was better than what a lot of teams ever had.
It's a little bit of a problem with revenue sharing, to be honest, is like, there isn't really the argument for what you're saying would be that after these 2-3 years, then they would really feel the pain, but it's blunted, right? There isn't real pain like that.
No, just on the court. That's all, not in the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, you guys, team should be the Indiana model. Every year you make the playoffs and things go right, you might mess around and win the East.
Dallas did it for a long time and just had it a year or 2 out, and they're back in with Luka again.
But I guess, David, your question is easier to answer because they're not going to win a championship. So, right? Like,
likely not.
They still did it. They're all in for like a 15% chance.
It would sell out every night. This team would sell out every night if they actually sell tickets. That's the head scratcher of all. It would be a huge boon, and it would be the place to be for 41 regular season games and a bunch of home games a year in the playoffs. And it just isn't now because they can't. Hopefully, maybe by May. I doubt it. Maybe.
All right. So who won the trade? We have like no time. All right.
Indiana
Cavs I like best. And Houston's fine.
I think Houston did very well. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Rod.
Take care, guys.